My intent this week was to take a break from Romans. We got through the first 8 chapters, and I was going to start in chapter 9 in January. And so we're going to take a break from that, but as I was studying what I want to do this week, it seemed like the best passage for this came from Romans 13. So we're back in Romans. If you find Romans 13, we'll go through that in a moment. There was a presidential aide that comes to the president and says, "Mr. President, I was wondering, sir, if it might be possible for my son to work somewhere in the White House." The president says, "Well, of course, what does he do?" He threw up his hands and said, "Nothing." "Excellent, we won't have to train him." After this last election cycle, it's pretty obvious that we don't have a lot of respect for our government. And that's too bad, because that's not how God intended it. Being citizens of heaven does not negate our responsibilities here on earth. I read a story this week about something that happened a few years ago. And it's about the kingdom of heaven, which apparently was located a few miles east of Salem, Oregon. There was a Christian man there who felt like, because he was a part of the kingdom of heaven, he was no longer subject to the national or local laws. So he declared his property, the kingdom of heaven, a sovereign state. He created his own driver's license and license plates for his car. Because it was his state, he didn't have to pay property taxes. He was no longer a citizen of America, he was a citizen of his kingdom. But unfortunately, the Marion County didn't agree with him. And so the court seized his land and sold his land at auction. So apparently we missed our opportunity to buy at auction the kingdom of heaven. How are we to act toward our government? I'm glad you asked, because that's what we're going to look at today in Romans chapter 13. What does the Bible say about our interaction with government? So Romans chapter 13, starting verse 1, says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. For there's no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers do not hold terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. You want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do what's right, and you'll be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They're God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it's necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. And this is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. And if honor, then honor." Paul tells us here that God establishes earthly governments to be in charge of society. Without some kind of civil authority, there would be chaos. Everyone doing whatever they wanted to do. Survival of the fittest. Anarchy. There would be no reason for me to leave you alone and to let you have your property if there were no law to keep me from harming you or taking your property. So God established governing authorities to punish evil, to reward good. That doesn't mean that the government takes God's place in judging the sinner. God is still God. But God did make governments to help people get along. And because we have governments, there are some things that we need to do as Christians. So Paul explains, starting in verse 5, he says, "Therefore it's necessary to submit to the authorities." Now that doesn't mean we always have to agree with the authorities. And of course, when we're commanded to do things contrary to the will of God, we have to obey God rather than man. But at least in our country, I can't think of anything that we're commanded to do that's contrary to God's will. I mean, there are a lot of things we're allowed to do that are contrary to God's will. But there's nothing that mandates we disobey God. And where we're free to choose those ungodly things, yeah, we can do something we're not supposed to. We could be legally right and be ethically or morally wrong. That's out there. But we're not commanded to do the wrong. And God will judge us if we choose to do the wrong. Our Constitution Constitution was written assuming that the citizens of this land would be moral and God-fearing people. And that's how democracy can work. But that's the only way democracy can work, because democracy becomes whatever the people are. And so if we, the people, become pagan and immoral and violent, then our government is going to become pagan and immoral and violent. Democracy has the capability of becoming an evil form of government if the people are evil. So it becomes more an issue of submitting to the government, and then for us as the body of Christ to be a moral influence on society, so society can remain a democracy making moral choices, rather than expecting that a bunch of immoral people ruled by immoral people are going to do good things. But because we have a government, because of that, Paul goes on to say that's why we pay taxes. Because God instituted governments, the government authority, then we have to pay taxes so the governments can do what the governments are supposed to do. No one likes to pay taxes. And most of us disagree with the way our taxes are used. And so some of us think, well, it'd be okay to withhold a few taxes because I don't want to go towards whatever it is I disagree with. But even Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar. And remember what Caesar did to Jesus. It was under the Roman authority that Jesus was crucified. And Paul here is writing the book of Romans while Nero was the emperor. Now, if you remember anything about Nero, he was a little bit paranoid. He killed off a lot of his family so that they wouldn't kill him and to become king, to become emperor. He killed Christians. He persecuted Christians. He was the one that blamed the Christians for the fire that took over Rome. He fed Christians to lions. He used them as flaming torches in his garden to light it up. He did terrible things to Christians, and Paul is writing to those Christians saying, submit to the governing authorities and pay taxes. Peter wrote similarly in 1 Peter, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority, or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. For it's God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people. So live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. So show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. And honor the emperor. I mean, Peter's writing to the same people that Paul was writing to. Maybe not those in Rome, but he's writing to people who were under the persecution of the Roman government. Under a time when Christians were being put to death. And he said, don't think that because you're free in Christ, because you're part of the kingdom of God, that you're exempt from the laws of the land. Don't use your freedom as an excuse to go out and do stuff that are illegal. Back to Romans, Paul goes on to give us another reason for obeying the government. He says, give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. And if honor, then honor. Now, we're good at complaining about our leaders. But when was the last time we honored our leaders? I mean, respect for authority begins at home. The foundation for children learning to respect authority starts with children learning to respect their parents. But there are times when we send our children a mixed message about honoring those in authority, because we'll sit and we'll make jokes about those in authority. How often do you make a joke about the political leaders? Or slander those who lead the country? I mean, how can we expect our children to honor authority if we don't honor authority? Or Paul says it this way in Titus, he said, remind the people to be subject to rulers and authorities, to be obedient, to be ready to do whatever is good, to slander no one, to be peaceable and considerate, and always be gentle toward everyone. So how do you talk about and think about and act towards your leaders? Is it an act of rebellion, an act of putting them down, or do we give them honor and dignity? honor our leaders, we ultimately honor the one who gave the authority to those governing establishments. When we honor our leaders, we ultimately honor God, who has authority over all. So may God help us show respect for leaders, even when we disagree with them. So what should be our response to our leaders? How should we think about and act towards our leaders? Paul addresses in 1 Timothy, he says, I urge then first of all that petitions and prayers and intercessions and thanksgiving be made for all people, including for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. This is good. It pleases God our Savior, who wants all people to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. We need to pray for our government. We need to pray for our leaders. We should be praying for the president and for the new president and for Congress. We should pray for our governor and his new job and our coming in governor. We should be praying for our state legislatures, and for our county leaders, our county boards, our commissioners, our school boards, and the local authorities. Pray for our police. Pray that God gives them wisdom. Pray for discernment in making decisions. Pray for their salvation. Pray for their families. Lift them up before God and pray for them and ask God's blessing on them. Instead of putting them down and making fun of them, and oh, there's so much to put down and make fun of, can we honor them and pray for them instead? We're going to do that now. It's going to work like this. I'm going to give you a minute or two to pray. And if you want to pray by yourself, pray by yourself. And if you think, man, I wish I had somebody to pray with about this because I hate just being the only voice in this, pray with the person next to you. And if you want to mumble it out loud a little bit, that's fine. Nobody will interrupt you. And then in a couple of minutes, I'll stand up and close us in a prayer. But I want you to be praying for our leaders. Start with the one you like the least. All right? And then work your way down. Or up, as the case may be. All right? Pray for those who are on their way out and those who are on their way in, not thanking God that they're on their way out. Pray that God would be able to honor them, that they would be honoring to God, that God would use them, God would give them discernment, that God would save their souls if they need that. But don't assume. But would you pray in a way that honors those in authority? Be in prayer. Fathers, we pray for our leaders. We recognize again that our ultimate citizenship is that we are members of the kingdom of heaven. And that does not exclude us from the things this world has to throw at us and for the responsibilities we have in our communities. So help us to live out your kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. May your will be done here through us. Help us, Father, to contribute to the good of society. Recognize that because your kingdom trumps ours, that if we would live that out, it doesn't matter who's in charge. So as we pray for those in charge, help us recognize that you are the King of kings and the Lord of lords. To recognize that ultimately we're your servants, to do what you call us to do. And as we read through here, you call us to go out into society, to obey by the laws, and to be an example to others, not to be rebellion against everybody else. So, Father, we look at the protests going on now, and they're protesting some of the things that we might agree with. But we have our own protests too, and we go out and protest the things that they disagree with. Father, would you help us, instead of protesting and crying and going on and trying to yell other people down and call them names and punish them in some way, would you help us, Father, to be your servants, to love our neighbor as ourselves, to pray for our enemies and not to heap insults on them, to do good and to not bad. Help us to harm no one. Instead, Father, help us to love them in your name, to encourage them as best we can, to share with them the good news, but not in a way that is condemning and vengeful, but in a way that is compassionate and desiring that they too come to know you as their Savior. That they too can experience life in your kingdom. So, Father, with all the mess in our country, with all the things that are going on here, would you give us wisdom and discernment? Would you help us to make wise choices? Would you help us to, again, love others in your name? Father, would you help us to pay the debts that we owe? Taxes or revenue. But Father, help us to show respect where we need to show respect and to pay honor where we need to pay honor. Live through us to better our communities. Live through us to be better citizens of this nation, but more importantly of your kingdom. We bow before you and we surrender our desires and our wants and all the things we're upset about and all the things we're excited about to allow you to be in charge. So take control in Christ's name.